multiplying and dividing radicals in Algebra 2. So we talked about how to simplify, and we talked about the exponent properties last class. Now we're going to start putting that into play a little bit here. When we are multiplying radicals, again, remember radicals are just that square root sign or cube root or fourth root. That's our term for radical. They have to be the same type, meaning both have to be square roots, both have to be cube roots, both have to be fourth roots. They have to be the same. So looking at our examples, number 1, both are square roots. Great, so we can move on. What we're going to do is we're going to take the square root and we're going to write them underneath 1. So square root of 3 times 15. Well, what is that number? 3 times 15 is 45. We can do that since they are both underneath and they are both square roots. So now I'm going to take that 45 and I'm going to break that down. The easiest thing to do is to just break it down to what you multiplied it to. So 3 and 15. And then 15 can be broken down to 3 and 5. Can't break those down anymore. And since it's a square root, I need 2 of the same, which I have. So that now means the 3 comes to the outside, and I'm left with the square root of 5. Now let's look at number 2. So we are dealing with, we have 4 times the square root of x squared y to the 5th times the square root of 12x to the 3rd y. So they're both square roots, so we're good. So I'm going to make 1. So square root, 4 is staying on the outside. I have the number 12. We like to write the numbers first when we're dealing with the inside. It's okay if you don't, but I will always write the number first. And then we have x squared times x to the 3rd. And if you remember from last class, we talked about when we are multiplying the same base with the exponents, we're really going to add them. So that now becomes x2 plus 3 is 5. And then we have y to the 5th times y. When you don't see an exponent, it's really a 1. So we're going to take 5 plus 1, and it gives us y to the 6th. So now from here, we can simplify the inside. So 12 I can break down to 2 times 6. 6 I can break down to 2 times 3. So I have a 2. Now I still have this 4 from the outside, so that's going to stay. So we have the 4, and we're going to multiply it to my 2 that I'm now bringing out. And I'm going to leave some space for the rest, because I still have the square root of 3 is left over. Now, I have x to the 5th, which means I have 5 x's. So I'm going to draw that out. Square root means I need 2 of the same. So I can make 2 groups. So x comes outside. We give it an exponent of 2, because that's how many groups. And then we have 1x left over. Then we have 6 y's. So I'm going to draw 6 y's out. Square root means I need 2 of the same. So y's are coming out. How many groups? I have 3 groups. No y's need to stay underneath. Now, this is not my final answer because we have to multiply 4 times 2. So my final answer is 8 x squared y to the 3rd all times the square root of 3x. Okay, so now let's look at example 3. Cube root, cube root. All right, so I'm going to make 1. So cube root, I like my number to come first. So 8x squared times x to the third is x to the fifth, and then we just have y to the fourth. And then we start breaking down. So 8 can be broken down to 2 times 4. 4 can be broken down to 2 times 2. Cube root means I need 3 of the same. So I have 3 2's. So the 2 is going to the outside, leaving some space. Cube root of whatever is left over. In this case, no numbers need to be written inside. All right, x to the fifth, so I'm going to draw out 5 x's. I need 3 in my group. So I was able to make one group, so x goes to the outside. And remember, anything that's not circled, we multiply. So x times x gives me x squared. And then I have 4 y's. So I'm going to draw that out, circle what I can. 1 y comes out, 1 y stays in. Then I look, is there anything to simplify on the outside? Nope. So that is my final answer. So multiplying is pretty simple. Now division gets a little bit more interesting. So here's the big thing. We're not allowed to have a square root sign or a cube root sign allowed in our denominator. So you have to think back to Algebra 1. In order to get rid of a square root, we need 2 of the same things. So think about it. Square root of 4, that equals 2 with no square root sign because 4 is broken down to 2 times 2. So when I'm dealing with these things on the bottom of my fraction, I need to create 2 of the same things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a whole other fraction. And I'm just going to rewrite whatever is on the bottom. So x squared and y. So now I have 2x squareds and I have 2 y's. And the reason I need 2 is because it's square root. But whatever I change on the bottom, I have to change on the top. So x squared and y. Then it just becomes multiplication. We multiply straight across. So now, on the bottom, x squared times x squared gives me x to the fourth. Y times y gives me y squared. Then on the top, x to the third times x squared gives me x to the fifth. Y times y gives me y squared. Okay. Now I'm going to start to simplify. So first I'm going to simplify the bottom. X to the fourth, that means I have 4 x's, which means I have 2 groups. So I have x squared on the outside. And I also have 2 y's. That creates 1 group, which means I have no square root sign left over. Everything was taken out. Now let's look at the top. I have 5 x's. So again, circle my groups. So I have x squared outside, I'll leave some space, and I still have a square root of that lonely x. And then I have y squared, which means I have 2 y's. So 1 y comes to the outside, and no y's are left over. Now here is a shortcut. Notice what the bottom was when we started. X squared y. And remember, we needed to multiply it by itself so we could have two of the same. Anytime you're taking the square root and you have two of each, it jumps right to what you started with. So you can skip everything in between. If you need to work it out, then you can work it out. This is not our final answer though, because look now, everything outside we have to simplify. And whenever we are dividing things with the same base, we have to subtract our exponents. So that now becomes 2 minus 2. So x to the 2 minus 2, which is really just x to the 0 power. Sorry, so x to the 2 minus 2 really becomes x to the 0 power, which just equals the number 1. Same with the y's. They're the same thing. Anything divided by itself is just 1. So our final answer is square root of x. All right, let's look at example 2. So again, not allowed to have a square root sign in the bottom, so I need 2 of everything. So I'm going to multiply it by itself. So I have a 2x, y. So I have 2 2's, 2 x's, 2 y's. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. 2x, y. Now remember my shortcut. I said the bottom, because we are multiplying by itself, that square root sign just goes away. So it just becomes 2xy on the bottom. The top is where we change. So I'm going to make one big sign, square root. 3 times 2 is 6. X times x is x squared. Y to the 3rd times y is y to the 4th. Then I need to simplify my square root sign. So I'm going to rewrite the number 6 over here. I'm going to try and break that down. That breaks down to 2 and 3. So there's nothing else I can do with that. So I know I'm still going to have a square root of 6. Now let's look at x squared. That means I have 2 x's. All right, so that is one group on the outside. No x's left over. And I have 4 y's. And I can make 2 groups, so y squared goes outside, nothing left over. And I still have 2x, y. Now we have to simplify everything on the outside. Well, look, x divided by x, anything divided by itself just becomes the number 1. Y's are a little bit different. This is like saying y squared over y. So we have to say 2 minus, remember when you don't see anything, it's just 1. So that really becomes y on the top, and no y's are left on the bottom. We're keeping it on the top of the fraction because 2 is bigger. So this now means I have a y on the top, square root of 6 on the top, divided by 2. Is that my final answer? Yes. Because that 6 is protected by the square root sign, it can't be divided. So that is my final answer.